to another Money in the Morning live recording session. We're going to have some fun here today. We're trying out some new stuff. I have a couple things still to write. Bear with me for a minute. Get this going. All right. Today's mug. Mickey Mouse listening to podcasts. Very, very important for today. Beautiful day here in Texarkana. Already super hot and muggy, but it's nice in here. And we've got some new stuff we're trying out today. So this will be fun. Little new music. Going to be fun, and a new some new bumpers.
Here come two headlines ripped from the financial press, only at Money in the Morning.
Only. It is booming today. We're going to try that again. Morning, Bill, Jennifer, Julianne. Richie and I have been working on some new production stuff.
And now, your first Money in the Morning headline.
How about, I know, right? All right. Now see if the host can keep up with all this new stuff. Two things. Let's get my headlines out here. We kind of pushed ourselves today because we didn't want to have a Money in the afternoon. We really wanted to record in the morning. And if you're on the East Coast, we're too late. I got those backwards. Wayne Duggan from U.S. News and Joe Ilaria. All right. Let's get rid of some of these. Sorry, guys. I know this is thrilling TV, but it will be in just a second. Make sure notifications are off. All right. Here we go. This is for Friday. Hey, Randy. Friday, Money in the Morning. Take two. Video game conference known as E3 is finishing up in Los Angeles. And while there's always big news about new software, platforms, hardware, and yes, of course, games, one company's making headlines this week by pushing themselves forward in subscriptions. What does that have to do with your money? We'll talk about Microsoft trying to become the new Netflix of gaming and your wallet, plus what not to do if you receive an inheritance right now. Live from my mom's unfinished basement, it's Money in the Morning. Hey there, stackers. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, Average Joe Money on Twitter. And on this show, we take two headlines, both from current press. We meld those two together, send you home with a big idea. It's super exciting. You can call it whatever you want. We call it Money in the Morning. And let's get this party started, shall we? Because on today's show, it's all about you and your income streams. That's the big topic today. That's what you're going to be taking home when we're done with this show. Hey, Money in the Morning is brought to you by M1 Finance. You know, you can press the easy button when it comes to your money and still have it customized to your liking. How do you do that, you ask? Oh, it's super easy. Head to stackybenjamins.com/M1 Finance, and you'll see how it's easy to get invested. We're invested in some big stuff today, so let's get this party started, shall we?
Here are today's Money in the Morning headlines. Ready, set, go.
Go! Our first headline comes to us from Yahoo Finance and is written by Wayne Duggan from U.S. News and World Report. Microsoft Corporation might become the Netflix of gaming. Netflix has been one of the biggest market success stories of the past decade, according to Morgan Stanley analyst Keith Weiss. Microsoft has positioned itself to potentially become the Netflix of online gaming in the long term. Weiss says Microsoft's gaming business has largely been ignored, undervalued, misunderstood by Wall Street, but it could prove to be a valuable earnings growth driver over the next 3 to 5 years. Weiss says investors and analysts tend to put too much focus on Microsoft's Xbox console sales. However, with the gaming ecosystem expanding from the console to the PC and mobile device, a shift from hardware and one-time video game sales to subscription services, and a future which includes streaming, broadcasting, and mixed reality, we see Microsoft well positioned for the future of gaming, Weiss says. Weiss estimates Microsoft gaming segment could contribute 38 cents in earnings per share by fiscal 2021, which would represent more than $11 per share in value for Microsoft stock. Morgan Stanley estimates Microsoft gaming revenue will eclipse $10 billion for the first time in fiscal 2018, up about 11% from 2017. So, it isn't just about geeks, right? Video game geeks, and I can video game geek with the best of them. Well, not the best of them. Like the best of them really are fat. I'm too old to play some of those games where, you know, the kids with the shooter stuff. Like I tried to play shooters with my son, who, by the way, went to work for Microsoft a few weeks ago. I say a few weeks ago. It's been like 3 months. My time flies. But I tried to play a game with him, and I'm like, okay, which button? Oh, I'm dead. Okay, now I'm back alive. Great. Okay, now how do I? Oh, I'm dead again. Okay, well, I'm going to. Oh, look at that. I'm dead again. Very frustrating. But what's not frustrating is looking at this headline about Microsoft and about what they're doing here in the video game business. It's interesting. Microsoft decided to buy 5 studios, brought those in-house. So now you're only going to get games from these 5 studios if you own an Xbox. Not if you own, for those of you that don't think about video games, they compete with a Sony unit called PlayStation, which I'm sure you've heard of, and They compete with the Nintendo thing called the Switch. But generally, the three big players, and there's other players, but the three big players in video games are Sony, Microsoft, and third, Nintendo. So those three companies. And Microsoft decided, instead of relying on all these other companies that make games, we're going to bring some companies in-house. We're going to have them make games that you will want. And then we're going to start really working on this subscription service that we have, where guess what? You can play all these games for free, right? As long as you continually pay us a monthly or an annual fee. Very much like Netflix, but for video games. And having read a lot of press about this stuff over the last week, like it's just infiltrated my feed, reading all this press about it's really, really interesting. And what's funny is that we can apply this Microsoft lesson in a few ways. The first one is this: solidify your income streams. So this is an income stream that analysts, according to this piece, I love this piece because this analyst didn't even think about this piece, right? How many times do we have things right in front of us that we don't even see, these income streams that we don't even know are out there? Oh, guess what? I like doing X. Oh, I could charge for that. That'd be fantastic, right? I like crocheting. Oh, I could have an Etsy store. Friends of ours over at the Fire Drill podcast working on that stuff right now. I can teach people how to do XYZ. I can do all these things. Like it's so frustrating to see people that have tough times balancing the budget, and they're clipping coupons when what they don't realize that in a lot of cases, it's easier to make more money. And what did Microsoft do? Microsoft just made more money where there was none before, doing things that they already had in house, and then making sure that they were worth even more, right? They bought more studios, they brought them in-house to make sure. Now they're doubling down on it. But a year ago, they introduced this Game Pass system that they have, this subscription service. This year, they really showed you, hey, guess where we're going with this? Surprise, we're doubling down on this thing. You can do the same thing with your income stream. Don't just think about going to work every day. Think about, are there other ways that I can make money? Instead of just worrying about the bottom line budget, worry about income. Money coming in. It's often easier to raise your income. Now, the tough thing about raising your income, right? When you raise your income, what do? You naturally spend more money. So you got to make sure that you have systems and controls in place. And this is where the budget really comes in. It's not about locking down and finding ways to live on ramen noodles all the time. Might be if you're in financial trouble, but it doesn't have to be. It's a way to make sure that lifestyle creep doesn't start happening as you bring in new income streams. You got to be able to lock down the lifestyle to a lifestyle that you like, that you appreciate, and then bring in more money that you can get saved. That's the key right there. And Microsoft doing that, solidifying their income streams. Cool stuff. Cool for you and I. Hey, let's say hello to everybody hanging out with us on Facebook today. We do this live without a net in front of a Facebook audience about 5 days a week. And if you just hang out at our Facebook page, facebook.com/iStackBenjamins, we'll magically appear sometime. And the pleasure will be all yours, I'm sure, as you watch us set up for this and chat a little bit ahead of time. And then we get the job done. Going to say a big hello to Andy, who's here. Said, nice header. You like the new music, Andy? We're working on it. It's going to take a little while for us to get good at it. But Richie and I today playing around, making some changes to the show. Leslie's here. Hey, Leslie. Randy's here. Lori's here. Julianne's here. Jennifer's here. Bill says, I like listening to the Money in the Morning podcast. Can I charge for that? Yeah. Well, here's the deal. It's our secret, Bill. It's our secret that it's free on any platform you want. But if you've got some really dumb friends and they don't know, I mean, go ahead and charge them for it. It's the American way. Just mark it up, right? Take something. We did a headline a few weeks ago about a guy that buys stuff at Walmart and he turns around and sells it at a discount on his Amazon store. Did you see that? Remember that headline? You could do that here. You could take the Money in the Morning podcast, charge $1 for a listen, and there you go. Bada boom, bada bing. Julianne's here and says, I love subscription services on things I use a lot, but I feel like everything costs a lot more when you want just one thing and don't subscribe. Yeah, that's a tough thing. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about this whole Microsoft subscription thing, and he said, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And he plays video games, and he said, I didn't want to be locked into just these few games. And then I feel guilty, right? It's like if I have Netflix, I feel like when Netflix comes out with new stuff, I got to watch the Netflix stuff now. right? Because I belong to that ecosystem. Once you're in the ecosystem, it's hard as hell to get out, and you do feel a little trapped by subscriptions. So not necessarily phenomenal all the time for the end user. Like, don't get me wrong. If Microsoft makes it really, really, really good and they can fill up gamers' days with as many games as possible, and Netflix, I mean, you'll never run out of stuff to watch on Netflix, but there's a certain fear missing out, isn't there? When the other subscription service puts something juicy out there, that's difficult. Bill's back with more. He says his new retirement plan is bootlegging Money in the Morning podcast. There you go. Back up the truck, Bill. Fill it full of all the episodes. You got our blessing. If you can charge for it, let us know. That's fantastic. Let's move on to our second headline here, which comes to us from CNBC. Found this piece interesting because we don't get to talk about estate planning as much as I would like. And the second I say estate planning, half the people turned off the podcast. But don't, because someday you might get an inheritance, and that's what this is all about. This is written by Joe Alaria. He's a certified financial planner and partner at Carson Alaria Wealth Management. 4 things to avoid after receiving an inheritance. Many people don't anticipate receiving an inheritance or know what to do with it when they receive it. The amount of the inheritance might even be a surprise. If you've recently received an inheritance, it's probably not under the best circumstances. Dealing with paperwork regarding financial and legal issues is probably not a priority during an already emotional time. And it can be easy to put off making decisions. Unfortunately, while large lump sum may seem like a lot at the time, the money won't go as far as you think. Here are 4 examples of poor decisions made by those who have received a large inheritance. Before we get to those, I agree with Joe. By the way, good name by the author here. Joe, best name on earth. Joe says that the money isn't as much as you think. And often, I mean, let's do this, shall we? Often people point to $1 million. That's a lot of money. What's a lot of money? Oh, $1 million. That's a lot of money. Let's say that you want to take that $1 million and you want to use the 4% rule that says you can take 4% of your nest egg and you can spend just that and your money won't run out. Now, the bad news is, guys, the 4% rule is a lie. It's not as great as it is purported to be. And there are many circumstances where the 4% rule doesn't really work. It's probably closer to a 3% rule. But a lot of people use this as kind of a rule of thumb. This 4% thing means you're in the ballpark. Use the 4% rule on $1 million. It's a $40,000 a year lifestyle. Now, don't get me wrong. It's a $40,000 a year lifestyle, right? That's fantastic. But a $40,000 a year lifestyle isn't the baller stuff that people think about when they think about $1 million. Oh my goodness, $1 million. I got enough. No, you don't. No, you don't. Got an okay life, but you're not rocking and rolling. So you are definitely getting by, but you're not rocking and rolling. So I agree. The money does not last as long as you think it will. So the 4 things that Joe points to, and I'll have the rest of these on my Twitter feed, Average Joe Money on Twitter. But the first one, spending the entire inheritance immediately. This is the obvious one, but it's easy to see why it would happen. When your bank balance goes from almost nothing to suddenly having hundreds of thousands of dollars or more in it, it becomes very enticing to start looking at new homes, new cars, and lavish vacations. Going to step out of this piece for a second. When I was a financial planner, I saw this all the time. I worked in an office with about 25 other financial planners, and we would sometimes share stories. And you would find people that won lawsuits, especially, not a lot of lottery winners, obviously, but people that won lawsuits. If they hadn't had money before, they'd take that money, they'd put it in their bank account, and bam, it was gone. And it was amazing how quick money was gone. And we would hear stories, just horrible stories about people spending money on things that they would never spend money on in a million years. But hey, it feels like it's not mine, right? It's this windfall. Why wouldn't I not spend it? Or why would I keep it and not just enjoy myself just a little bit? And they just a little bit until the money's gone. I even had that with people who were in retirement. Some of the early retirees I worked with couldn't keep their hand out of the cookie jar. Once they rolled that 401k over their IRA and they started living on it, my goodness, you could, hey, just this one time, I got to take a little extra. You know, the more you take now, the less money that can make for, yeah, I know all that. I just need it, just this one thing. And then a month later, oh, you'll never believe what happened. I have just this one thing and just this one thing. And then we're having a discussion 4 years into retirement about how they have to go back to work. Never my favorite discussions. Number 2, investing prematurely in a business. Once you've received your inheritance, you may also find yourself with opportunities to invest in business opportunities. Those opportunities might be with a friend or family member small business, or perhaps with a business of your own you've considered starting for years. But like any investment, it's crucially important to carefully evaluate the business. Man, I'll tell you what, do not take your inheritance and invest in a restaurant or opening a small business. I think the number is 2%. 2% of all small businesses last 3 years. Not good. And if it's a restaurant, by the way, it's even worse. So if you've dreamed of owning a restaurant for years, I would first, here's what I do. I would first put money in a diversified group of investments, right? Stocks, like we talked about Microsoft earlier, stocks run by people that have run businesses before. That's a cool thing about buying a stock, right? You can buy a business, but you're buying a business that's run by professionals. And the chance of you losing your money in that business is a lot less. And then if you invest in like the S&P 500, where it's 500 of the biggest companies in America, now you have professional businesses run by professionals on a stock exchange. You're still owning a business. You're just getting a business that knows what the hell it's doing versus going, oh, you know what? There's this vacant building I often run by. Man, I could own a restaurant. You just bought yourself a job. And I'm not poo-pooing that, by the way. But I'd make sure that you have your stuff together, great business plan, know what you're doing before you go open up that business. All right, back to the piece. Number 3 on this list is loaning people money. I'm not even going to read that section. Even if somebody tells you that they're going to pay you back, once they found out that you received an inheritance, you got to consider it a gift. You've got 2 choices. Either there's going to be big fights as you try to get your money back that's never coming back, or you got to consider it a gift. And number 4, leaving it in the bank. If you just leave it in the bank, you're going to lose money to inflation. You know, a bank paying 0.02. If you had to like magnify money, maybe you'll find one paying 1.7, 1.8. Maybe even you find 2%. But if you even at 2%, if inflation's 3%, the price of those video games we were talking about earlier are going up way faster than the price of than your money in the bank. Do not leave your long-term money in the bank. You need that money to grow. Those are 4 things to do. But I'll tell you, there's another one that Joe doesn't talk about. Initially, I do agree with just sitting. And even if it sits in the bank, sit until you're not emotional. Because emotions, when it comes to your money management decisions, I have seen emotions kill too many plans. I have a friend right now that did something not that great with his money. And we had a talk about it a few weeks ago over a glass of wine. And he's got some emotional stuff going on and said, you know what? I just don't care. I just, okay, so I lost a little money. I'm like, no, look at the long-term effect of that. It's easy. You didn't need to do that. Emotions kill your plan. So you have to get to the point where you're not feeling it as emotional. And definitely after an inheritance, you might be very emotional. Try to get rid of that as much as possible, 6 months, maybe even a year, and then start making plans. All right, we're going to come back here in a second with the big idea. That's where we take both of these headlines. We seem to have nothing to do with each other. Microsoft and video games and inheritance. How are we going to put those together for a big idea for you to take home? We're going to get there in just a second. But first, got to talk one more time about M1 Finance. M1 Finance they're always adding things to the platform. And talking to Brian Barnes, the founder of M1 Finance this last week, he was talking about how now you can use low-cost borrowing. And do you want to borrow from your portfolio? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But when you look at places to borrow, if you're in a crunch and you have to borrow from somewhere, borrowing at a super low interest rate from M1 Finance versus borrowing, let's say, from Louis the Loan Shark down there on the corner, taking out a payday loan, not that great an idea. That's just one of the many things. Not my favorite piece of M1 Finance, but M1 Finance gets more flexible by the day. And you can have everything from the robo-advisor on one end to complete do-it-yourself at the cost of free. Absolutely free. Now, those loans, by the way, aren't free if you take a loan from M1 Finance. But for more on how that works, IRAs, Roth IRAs, regular brokerage accounts, making it a robo, stackingbenjamins.com/M, the number 1 finance. By the way, while I was talking about M1 Finance, Jennifer said, Mom told me I was getting a nickel for my inheritance. Congratulations. Here's what you do, Jennifer. Don't be emotional about the nickel. Breathe in, breathe out. Maybe let the nickel sit there for a month, for 6 months, for a year, and then decide what to do with the nickel. It's fantastic. All right. How do we put these two headlines together? Our first headline came to us from Yahoo Finance by way of U.S. News and World Report. Microsoft fighting to be the Netflix of gaming. And what we talked about there was looking at your income streams, solidifying different income streams. People worry about their budget, but they don't think about ways to make more money. And Microsoft just finding out, and analysts starting to find out that, hey, Microsoft has created a brand new way of making money that they didn't have before. Pretty exciting. And then second, avoid these 4 things when inheriting money. And our takeaway there, emotions kill plans. The big takeaway from both of these is this concept, which we hear people talk about all the time, called ROI. ROI is return on investment. And I like this idea. I was talking to somebody the other day, an entrepreneur, about ROI, but you don't have to be an entrepreneur to think about ROI. But when I'm investing something, whether it's time, whether it's money, I have to think about what's my return going to be. And sadly, we're geared as humans to think a lot about safety, aren't we? I want my money to be safe. I don't want to lose my money. But we don't think enough about what's the ROI. So if I'm looking at putting my money in an S&P 500 mutual fund versus putting money into creating a business locally, maybe a restaurant down on the corner, my ROI after the time spent is probably better having somebody else manage that money, unless I'm a pro at building restaurants. Listen, if I'm Danny Meyer in New York City building restaurants, I'm not investing in the S&P 500 very much. I'm doing it a little bit for diversification, but I'm building restaurants as much as I can. But think about where your return on investment is. It's funny. I had a client back in the day, I'm going to tell an old guy story because I'm kind of an old guy. I had a client that with his dad ran a cattle ranch, and his year over year return in that cattle ranch was 10%. And when we looked at their financial plan, I couldn't think of anything better to do with that money. I said, why wouldn't we take a decent portion of the money? Like for the average person, the hull of your ship to get you where you want to go is the S&P 500. You know what? The hull of this guy's ship should be cattle. He knows cattle. He gets cattle. He understands it. He can diversify, right? They had herds in different places, so he could diversify it a little bit. It just didn't make sense to not do that. And it was this 10% return on investment. And all we thought about was ROI. We thought about the downside. We looked at the downside. We looked at the upside. That was his thing. And it's going to be different for everybody. But think about your ROI when making your plan. Microsoft, taking a look at all the assets they have. What do I have? Oh, guess what? I can create a new income stream. I receive an inheritance. I now have all this money. I spend it right now. Horrible ROI. Beautiful vacations and pictures while you're broke later, but horrible ROI. I loan it to a relative. Horrible ROI. I've created a restaurant when I have no business doing that. Horrible ROI. I invest this in different pots of money for the long term. Much, much better ROI. Think about return on investment. And that will save you not just money, it'll save you time. And time's really the biggest commodity that we have, isn't it? Didn't say that correctly. It's what I love about doing this live. You know what I'm saying. Time is what we need to protect the most. It's the commodity we need to protect the most is time. And if I can save time by investing my money into things that help me protect my time, I think that's where I'm investing. All right. So, sounds like I got choked up there. I did not. I just have something in my throat. I have no idea what that is. That's what I love about doing this live. All right. I should have went with them getting choked up. This is the best takeaway ever. Thanks a lot, everybody on Facebook hanging out with us today. Thank you to you listening wherever you are. Go Stacks and Benjamins. We'll see you next time back here at Money in the Morning. Bye-bye.
Money in the Morning is created by Joe Saul Sehi and is brought to our channels by our producer and engineer, Richie Rutter-Reese. Stacking Benjamins and Money in the Morning are for entertainment purposes. Before making moves, consult with your financial advisor. Looking for training sessions? Kathleen Sellemans has a great suite of Stacking Benjamins tools, so head on over to learn.stackingbenjamins.com. Hoping to chat with us on the web? Say hello to Shannon Cowan, our social media guru and community manager in our Facebook group. She can be found at stackingbenjamins.com/basement. From the basement, I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. See you tomorrow.
All right. 25 minutes, a little long. Bill, that was hilarious. Inheritance tax planning. I wonder which 4 people would buy that one, right? Would buy that game. So here's what we're experimenting with. First of all, I didn't want to keep using the same Stacking Benjamins. Whoops. I didn't want to keep using the same Stacking Benjamins.
Hello, darlings. And now it's time for your favorite part of the show.
And I like that one. But we created a bunch of new ones.
And now, your first Money in the Morning headline.
And we'll experiment with that a little bit. I like it. I don't love it. I think it's decent. But I like this idea. I like podcasts that at the beginning kind of give me an intro. I don't like podcasts that do this at the beginning. Welcome to episode 402 of the Money in the Morning podcast. And then they just go in like, I don't care that it's episode 402. I do care it's Money in the Morning, but I think I pressed that button on my player. So I think I know what podcast it is. I do like something that allows me to kind of get into it and decide if I want to listen or not. So I think a lot of podcasts get it wrong, but I think if we can find a way to kind of introduce the topics ahead of time, I think that's going to be good. It'll bring people in more and keep more. It certainly keeps me more, right? And I think when you design anything, you do what you pay attention to why you keep watching. Like, why do I keep watching the Tonight Show, let's say, which I really like Jimmy Fallon. So, and I keep watching in the beginning because it's really punchy. It's really upbeat, which is why we have neighbor Doug do the upbeat stuff. I think, and I definitely am going to have to keep scripting that beginning. I scripted today. I sounded a little bit like I was reading. So I've got some work to do there. And then, and maybe that music isn't right, but, oh, thanks, Lori. I do like this music, like for that intro, talking over before we go to this. I still like this theme song. I think it's a good theme song. I like how one's slow and one's fast, so the show kind of picks up speed. When we hit the theme music, I got to figure out how to transition better, what to say between the two of those. And Bill, you're right. That's actually why I went with the British accent. Isn't that funny? Because for some reason we give people with that accent the benefit of the doubt. And I told Richie that even if it stinks, even if it's not as good as I want, just the accent's going to keep people around. And so,
Who needs coffee when you have Money in the Morning headlines?
she has a nice voice. So I might change that music there though. So anyway, that's where we're headed today. Pretty excited about making a few changes to the show. And then, we went up to 25 minutes and I got to lower that down. So a little less pontificating. We'll get it back down to, I still want this to be a 20-minute show. Probably no more than 20. All right, guys. Anyway, thanks for hanging out. That's kind of the method to our madness. Time for us to go. Oh my goodness, it's noon here. Have a great day. I'm going to have some lunch.